Zakharavia, the fallen city, the land of no return.
Ever heard of Victor Vran? I hadn't, but after spending some time with the game this week, it's certainly worth discussing. You see, this action RPG from the small Bulgarian studio responsible for the last 3 Tropico games, among others, takes advantage of each and every platform to its fullest in a way that we just don't often see these days. Let's take a look. For starters, yes, that means PlayStation 4 Pro support. Victor Vran turns in a resolution of 2880 by 1620 at 60 frames per second with pristine anti-aliasing. It may not be full 4K, mind you, but the image quality here is superb, an important feature for a top-down game like this with rather small characters. Beyond that, the HUD and text elements are all rendered at a higher resolution, meaning a crisp interface on 4K displays. If we jump over to the regular PS4 then, Victor Vran is no slouch. We see a 1080p rendering resolution at 60 frames per second with the same excellent anti-aliasing, resulting in a very clean presentation. It should be noted that all versions make use of an adaptive resolution feature as well in order to maintain a smooth frame rate, but in our testing, this didn't appear to activate often. The game remains crystal clear at almost all times. Even Xbox One, which is dropped to a maximum of 900p, as we often see on the platform, holds up really well. The anti-aliasing does a tremendous job of keeping the jaggies at bay here, despite the lower resolution. Sure, the edges on objects are slightly blurrier as a result, but it still looks rather clean and smooth. Xbox owners also enjoy a high 60 frames per second frame rate to go along with it. But there's another neat feature here. Vran actually makes use of the Xbox One impulse triggers, a feature that doesn't seem to crop up often in multi-platform games. It's just another example of how the developers sought to utilize each console to its fullest, and it's much appreciated. So between all 3 versions then, you get excellent image quality even at lower resolutions, and an experience that feels well optimized for each and every machine. If we compare the game across each platform then, you'll notice that the visual differences stem entirely from resolution, and that's it. The rest of the assets and textures are like for like here. Now, it's not necessarily a stunning looking game, mind you, but the visuals work well enough for the type of game it is, which is really just kind of a Diablo style game with jumping and a narrator similar to Bastion.
And took the wrong path. Moving on, Victor discovered...
Another nice touch are the loading screens. Click on a new area and a video pops up previewing the look of the new level before you commit to loading it. A nice touch. And of course, the actual loading times are very, very short on all platforms. But there's also a PC version here as well. In fact, the PC version of Vran dates back to early 2015, with this latest version introducing loads of new content alongside the console conversions. As you'd expect, the game works very well on the PC with support for high resolutions and impeccable performance on our test machines here. It's not exactly a game you'd expect to run poorly, mind you, and the developer is primarily a PC developer, but it's still good to see that the results here are remarkably solid. The options menu is also packed with settings to adjust, including dynamic resolution available on the PC, which is nice. The game also supports various interface configurations, allowing you to play with a gamepad or a keyboard and mouse with the proper interface. Visually, the console version stacks up very well against the PC version, with slightly sharper textures on the PC being one of the few differences. Really, all in all, Victor is solid on the PC, no doubt about that. Okay, so how about performance then? Vran promises 60 frames per second across all platforms, but can it really deliver? Well, on the PlayStation 4 Pro at 1620p, the results are generally excellent. Battles cruise along at a stable 60 frames per second with little issue. We noticed occasional dips here and there, literally just single duplicate frames, but overall everything moves at a steady rate. While we haven't had a chance to play too far into the campaign just yet, there are already battles with loads of enemies on screen early on, and these sequences pose no challenge for the hardware. Input lag is kept to a minimum, performance is fast, frame pacing is perfect, and vertical sync is always engaged. To put it simply, the tech never gets in the way of the action. And that's really what it's all about, right? So over on the standard PS4 then, we see exactly the same thing. The game has no problems holding 60 frames per second at 1080p no matter what is happening on screen. It's smooth, stable, and fluid, and feels great to play. Again, no complaints here, it's 60 frames per second, it controls great, what more could you want? And it's the same over on Xbox One, really. The game just doesn't seem to drop frames, and it always feels every bit as responsive as a 60 frames per second game should. If you couldn't guess by now, it's not easy to come up with a lot to say in these situations. Usually frame rate analysis is all about critiquing worst case scenarios, but here, the game really just runs perfectly on all machines. That's just not something that happens often. And really, that's it. Victor Vran is not a visually ambitious game, but it takes advantage of each platform's unique features while turning in flawless performance. And when you think of a console game, this is really the kind of thing you should be getting. There's no caveats here, no real flaws to discuss, it just runs like butter and looks sharp and clean. So if you're looking for a Diablo-style game with Doug Cockle, the same man responsible for the voice of Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher, this isn't a bad way to go.
Why didn't the hunters retreat and regroup? What was keeping them in this cursed city? The pieces are forming a disturbing pattern.
For us at Digital Foundry, it's nice to be able to highlight a smaller game like this that works so well. The developer definitely deserves credit for a job well done. But with that, we've reached the end of this rather straightforward video. But if you found it useful, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter as always. And until next time, this is John signing off.